Hi everybody. Okay, we've got our GPS, we've got our ribbon tied to it so we can't lose it. We're out here at the HSU Annex on our first field visit. So one of the things we want to be able to do is we want to be able to tell how accurate is our GPS really. Okay, we'll talk more about this in class, but basically we want to make sure we have a way to verify how accurate it is. One of the ways to do that is to establish what we call a benchmark. It's a point on the ground that we use to check the accuracy against a source that has higher accuracy. The easy way to do that is off of using the aerial and satellite imagery that comes with ArcGIS. But to do that, we need to have something we can find in that imagery. Okay, so trees aren't really good. They're hard to find a point. You might think the corner of the road would be good. Probably not, especially if it doesn't have this yellow pattern or you can't see it. What does work well is something here where we've got a green corner. Okay, so we've got this big green area, we've got a corner right here. This is going to be relatively easy to find on aerial or satellite photography. So what we can do is just take a waypoint, 157. I'm actually going to take a couple. Okay, so now I've got a couple waypoints that I can use as my benchmarks. Write those down in your notebook as your benchmark. They're not part of our sampling. They're just there to check our accuracy. So I've got our 1 meter quadrat from the forestry stock room. These are pretty easy to use and pretty inexpensive. It's just a bunch of PVC pipe and connectors you can buy at your local hardware store. Okay, now all you have to do to put it together is just spread it out and slide the bars into the T's. It's that easy. Don't feel like you have to put it together too tightly. It's got a piece of elastic cord in there that'll hold it together for you. So that's all we have to do. And now we have a 1 meter quadrat. Okay, it's 1 meter on a side, so 1 meter squared. And this is what we use for doing percent cover for plants. Now, whenever you're going to sample an area, you want to take a look at the area and say, well, we want to have a somewhat random sampling of the entire area. And that means we can't just take and drop the quadrat. We need to randomize a little bit. So one way to do that is to just toss it. So we've got our 1 meter quadrat, and in this exercise what you're going to do is you're going to measure approximately what the cover is of each of the different species. Now you don't have to do this down to subspecies and variety. In fact, common name is fine. We've got some dandelions, maybe over 20%, 30%. We've got some grass, that's fine. Some other species. You can have fun with it, do the best you can. This is really about the waypoints and using a GPS. Now, while this was in my pocket, it's on some random screen that I didn't pick because it was changing, and all I have to do now is push back. It goes back to the main screen. Scroll down until I find mark waypoint. Put this over. Got the number 132. Got our field book. Go ahead and take a note, 132, and write down the percent cover of each of the species. Or use the protocol sheet that's on the website, either one. And when you're doing field work, you'll do the same thing. Okay? You'll either use a protocol sheet, or you'll go ahead and make notes in your field book. Now, if you're training field crews, it's best to use the protocol sheet, especially if there's more than one crew, so they're all doing it the same way. All right? That's all we have to do. Now, to get a good sample, think about how we're going to need to do that. Okay? We just want to throw this again. We want to get the corners. Do we want to get spread out? Do we need to throw some over here? Okay, so they're closer to the edge. Here we've got shade versus the road. A lot of things to think about when sampling, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about different sampling methodologies. Okay? Now also think about how many samples do we need to represent everything that's here. And that's one of the real challenges, is how to do the sampling without introducing bias, but capturing everything we're interested in. And make sure to get your GPS out, record all the points. Okay? So now before we leave, we want to take a couple more benchmarks, right? Over the course of our sampling, satellites will have changed, the accuracy of our GPS will have changed. So before we leave the site, we want to take a couple more. I'm actually doing this at a different corner. That's going to give me a couple different places to measure my accuracy. So again, I'm going to stand over this corner. It's waypoint 134. And I'm going to take a couple, and then I'll make a note. 134 and 135 are my alternate benchmark, my second benchmark.